welcome to our channel. Today we will tell about Andrei Chikatilo, a Russian serial killer nicknamed the Butcher of Rostov. Click subscribe button to hear more content like this. On December 22, 1978, a 9-year-old girl named Yelena was returning home. She met a man on the road. This stranger, who seemed well-intentioned at first and convinced her to take her home. On December 24th, Yelena had been missing for 2 days. A terrible news spread among neighbors in a short period of time. The girl's lifeless body was lying on the bank of a river. Her head was hit with a hard object as she was attacked with a sharp object. It was a monstrous crime. The authorities immediately started investigating the crime. A clue was found. This clue led the investigators to a man named Alexander. He lived nearby and had a criminal record for assault. A man was interrogated and confessed his crime. He was executed in 1982 after being imprisoned. The case seemed to be closed. The criminal confessed his crime. What everyone did not know was that Alexander was innocent. He was not Yelena's murderer. A monster was still out there, and he had just begun crimes that would last 12 years. On September 4, 1981, a lifeless body was found on the edge of the path leading to a forest. The victim was 17-year-old Larisa, who had been brutally attacked. All signs pointed to a hate crime. Investigators believed that whoever the murderer was would commit a similar act, and thus had to be stalked. Investigation continued for the next months, but no progress was made. On June 12, 1982, a 13-year-old girl left home to buy groceries. This was the last time her mother saw her daughter alive. She went missing for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, her lifeless body was found after a short while. Like other victims, she had been attacked monstrously. The killer committed 6 more murders in the next few months. He had generated an atmosphere of panic throughout the country. There were 6 victims, 2 of whom were men and 4 were women. The style of committing the attack was monstrous. According to the initial investigation, these were the crimes committed by a Satanist sect. The victims were sacrifices for rituals. While the investigation was underway, the murders continued. By 1983, 8 more people were killed by the same person. The murderer committing these atrocities was nicknamed the Butcher of Rostov. It was now evident that the local police were insufficient to solve this mysterious case. It was too late. A special team was sent to the region under the leadership of an experienced detective from Moscow. The team was led by Mikhail Fedosov. Despite his efforts, the killer could not be apprehended. The victims were men and women between the ages of 8 to 44. He chose his victims randomly. He had no specific type. He was always one step ahead of the police. This was an intelligent monster. Investigators created the profile of the killer with the help of a well-known psychiatrist. The profile was as follows. A murderer was between 45 to 50 years of age. He had the desire for power, went through a terrible childhood. He was a sadist and a pervert. The authorities reduced the number of suspects to match this profile. By 1990, there was major breakthrough in the investigation. The place where all the victims were found had one thing in common. They were all close to a train station. They started inspecting train stations more frequently. The investigators knew that the killer they were looking for was somewhere out there. On November 6, an officer was on duty near the train station. He spotted someone coming out of the forest. The man's clothes were dirty and there were red stains on him. The officer stopped him for inspection. The man's name was Andrei. Then the police officer let him go. This was a surprising decision. Police did not suspect him, but recorded it. When other authorities learned about this incident, they placed the same man under intense surveillance. On November 20, the officers who were watching him noticed that he was constantly passing by children. After that, they decided to detain him and interrogate him. During the interrogation, the man rejected all accusations leveled against him. The authorities were convinced that they had caught the right man. They had him meet with a psychiatrist. After this meeting, confessions started coming. He was really the butcher of Rostov. He was born on October 16, 1936. His parents were simple workers. He grew up in extreme poverty. Sometimes he went hungry for days. When he was 5 years old, his mother told him a story about his brother. According to the story, his brother was eaten by other villagers. We do not know whether this story is true or false, but the only thing we know is that it deeply affected Andrei's psychology. This is what motivated him to cannibalism. His father was taken hostage during the World War II and was held in captivity until 1949. After going to school in 1944, Andrei was bullied by his classmates. His bullies would say that he was a coward because of his father being taken hostage. This bullying also left negative traces on Andrei's psychology. He was angry with his family. He wanted to enroll at the university, but failed admission exams. He also had hard time talking to girls because of his shyness and introverted personality. At the same time, he felt hatred towards women. Once he visited one of his sister's friends and tried to attack her. After this incident, he started planning his murders. Deep down, he turned into a monster who was not satisfied no matter what he did. He joined the army in 1957. After returning from the military service in 1960, he found his first job as a telephone technician. Meanwhile, his sister continued to introduce him to her friends. He later married and had 2 children. He was also determined to advance in his career. He managed to enter the university and major in the Russian language and literature. He graduated from the university in 1971 and started working as a teacher. At this point, Andrei had become mentally unstable. This situation continued until he was asked to resign in 1974. In the following years, he found a job in other schools, but the students there did not respect him. He was constantly humiliated and reached the point where he could not control himself sexually. He was making sexual advances to his students. For this reason, he was dismissed from his job after a short time. He secretly bought an old house where he was having sex with sex workers. However, this was not enough for him. He committed his first murder on December 22, 1978. After his confessions, the police arrested him. He stood trial on April 14, 1994. A complicated court process took place. Andrei claimed he was crazy. When acting erratically, he would be put back in his cell. He was interrogated about all murders he committed. It was confirmed during these interrogations that his victims were random people. He claimed that he committed these murders because of the pressure he had received from his family. He claimed that he was actually a good person. He tried to distort the questions that he was asked. He constantly denied his crimes. He claimed he was mentally unstable and demanded that he be tried accordingly. However, the investigation into the case denied his claims. In addition, the case was highly publicized, and local residents wanted this monster to be punished. Commuting his sentence would result in nationwide protests. People wanted death penalty for the monster, but this was rejected. The judge ruled that the suspect's insane actions in court were artificial. In the end, he was tried for 53 murders and found guilty of 52 of them. He is thought to have committed more murders. He was also tried for the crimes he committed while he was a teacher. The sentence was death penalty. The verdict was clear. When he was given the right to speak, Andrei just remained silent. His execution took place on February 14, 1994. He was 57 years old when he died. Andrei was a monster who committed murders because he could not suppress his hideous urges. His crimes were of a monstrous nature. He was a public figure for a long time. It took police 12 years to catch him. It remains unknown how many more lives he would have taken if he had not been caught.